Hey guys, tonight congratulations, you're the Chinese emperor. And you wake up in the Forbidden City to the sound of a peacock screaming directly into your ear canal while the air around you reeks of fermented fish sauce mixed with human sweat and whatever that eunuch had for breakfast. Your silk sheets are damp with perspiration because apparently gold-plated rooms don't breathe, and there's a monkey somewhere in your bedroom who's been trained to wake you by gently tugging your hair. Except he's not gentle, and your scalp feels like it's on fire. You roll over and immediately regret it because the bed is covered in what feels like wet rice paste, which is actually some kind of imperial beauty treatment that's been fermenting on your skin all night. And the monkey starts chattering because he thinks you're trying to escape his morning routine. The peacock, meanwhile, has opinions about your movement and expresses them at a volume that makes your teeth ache. Welcome to being the son of heaven, where every single thing about your morning involves animals with boundary issues and substances that shouldn't exist anywhere near a human face. And trust me, this monkey situation is about to become the least of your problems once we discuss what happens when you need to use the bathroom. But first, let's set the scene. You're lying in the dragon bed, which sounds impressive until you realize it's carved with actual dragon scales that dig into your back, in a room that's supposedly the most luxurious space in all of China. The walls are covered in yellow silk, because yellow is the imperial color, which means everything you own has to be yellow, including your underwear, which has been dyed with something that smells like old eggs and makes your skin break out in a rash that itches constantly. The air in here is thick enough to chew. It's a mixture of burning incense, which is supposed to purify the space, but mostly just makes everything smell like a temple that's been closed for 3 months, and the body odor of roughly 40 people who live in this palace and apparently don't believe in washing. The incense is made from sandalwood and other exotic ingredients that cost more than most people's houses. But it can't mask the fact that somewhere in these walls, someone is cooking fish heads, and the smell is seeping through the supposedly airtight imperial chambers. Your morning routine begins with the monkey, whose name is probably something dignified, like Precious Jade or Golden Whisker. But you've started thinking of him as that bastard, because he has zero concept of personal space. He's been trained by the court eunuchs to perform what they call the gentle awakening ritual, which involves him sitting on your chest and methodically grooming your eyebrows while making soft cooing sounds. This sounds peaceful until you experience it and realize that monkey saliva has a very specific texture, sort of like warm mucus, and he's essentially spitting on your face, while the peacock provides a soundtrack that could wake the dead. The peacock, by the way, isn't just decoration. He's your official wake-up call, trained to scream at precisely the hour of the rabbit, which is somewhere around 6 a.m., except he's apparently not great at telling time because he's been going off since 4. His screech sounds like someone torturing a violin while a child cries in the background, and it echoes off all the gold surfaces in your room, which were designed to amplify sound so that everyone in the palace knows exactly when the emperor is awake. Let's be clear, this isn't the peaceful morning meditation you might imagine. The moment your eyes open, you're immediately aware that your body is sticky with sweat and beauty paste. Your hair is being molested by a small primate. Your ears are bleeding from peacock noise, and you can taste fish sauce in the air. This is your life as the most powerful man in China. You try to sit up, and the monkey graciously allows this by relocating to your shoulder, where he continues his grooming routine on your neck. His tiny hands are surprisingly rough, like sandpaper, and he's found a particularly interesting spot right below your ear that he's decided needs intensive attention. Meanwhile, the peacock has noticed your vertical and has taken this as a sign to increase his vocal efforts, spreading his tail feathers in what the court calls a morning salute, but feels more like psychological warfare. The room itself is a masterpiece of imperial architecture, which means it's designed to make you feel important while simultaneously making you as uncomfortable as possible. The ceiling is painted with elaborate dragons and phoenixes, which would be beautiful if you weren't lying flat on your back, staring at them for 12 hours a day, because imperial protocol requires you to sleep, eat, and receive visitors in this exact position. The paint is made with gold leaf and precious pigments, but it's also mixed with some kind of binding agent that smells like rotting vegetables and occasionally flakes off onto your face while you're trying to sleep. The walls are covered in yellow silk tapestries that tell the story of your glorious ancestors, but they're also home to an impressive collection of insects that seem to enjoy the expensive fabric. You can hear them rustling around in there, and occasionally one drops onto your pillow, which is stuffed with something that might be feathers, but feels more like wood chips and smells like wet chicken. Your bed, the famous dragon bed, is carved from rare hardwood and inlaid with jade and precious stones. It's a work of art that took master craftsmen years to complete. It's also the most uncomfortable sleeping surface ever created, because apparently comfort wasn't a priority when they were designing furniture for the Son of Heaven. The mattress is stuffed with silk and down, but it's been compressed by centuries of imperial bodies into something that feels like sleeping on a slightly soft rock. The pillows are filled with what they call dragon's breath herbs, which are supposed to give you prophetic dreams, but mostly just make your head smell like a medicine cabinet and give you a headache. The sheets are pure silk, woven by imperial silkworms that are fed a special diet of mulberry leaves and, according to palace rumors, ground pearls. This makes the silk incredibly fine and valuable, but also incredibly slippery, which means you spend most of the night sliding around like you're on ice while trying to find a position that doesn't make your back ache. The silk is also treated with some kind of imperial finishing process that makes it slightly sticky to the touch. So while you're sliding around, you're also sort of adhering to the fabric in uncomfortable ways. But here's where things get really interesting. And by interesting, I mean disgusting. Your bedroom routine isn't just about you. Oh no. You see, as emperor, you're never actually alone, not even when you're sleeping. There are eunuchs stationed around your room at all times, supposedly for your protection, but really they're there to make sure you follow proper imperial bedroom protocol, which is extensive and involves more rules than most people have for their entire lives. The first rule is that you must sleep in the center of the bed, no matter what. Not slightly to the left, not angled diagonally, perfectly centered. This is supposedly for cosmic balance and to maintain your connection to the heavens. But practically, it means you can't roll over or adjust your position without a eunuch politely coughing to remind you that you're off-center. These coughs happen approximately every 20 minutes throughout the night, which means you never actually reach deep sleep because you're constantly being reminded of your exact position on the mattress. The second rule is about the monkey. Precious Jade, or that bastard, whatever you want to call him, is required to sleep at the foot of your bed every night. This is supposed to be an honor for the monkey and a symbol of your connection to all living creatures. But what it actually means is that you're sharing your bed with an animal that has digestive issues and makes small disturbing noises all night long. Monkeys, as it turns out, are not quiet sleepers. They chatter in their sleep. They scratch themselves constantly, and they have a tendency to sleep groom, which means you might wake up to find him braiding your leg hair while unconscious. The peacock, mercifully, sleeps outside your room, but only just outside. He's positioned right by your door, which is left slightly open for ventilation, which means you can hear every single sound he makes throughout the night. Peacocks are not peaceful sleepers either. They rustle their feathers constantly. They make small peeping sounds, and occasionally they have what can only be described as nightmares, which involve a lot of thrashing and abbreviated screaming. It's like sleeping next to a very large, very angry bird, which is exactly what you're doing. But wait, there's more. The beauty treatments that you're required to undergo every night aren't just uncomfortable, they're actively disgusting. Your face is covered with a paste made from ground pearls, rice powder, and something called imperial honey, which isn't actually honey, but some kind of tree sap that's been fermented for months. This paste is supposed to keep your skin pale and smooth, which are essential qualities for the Son of Heaven, but it has the texture of wet cement and smells like a combination of old fruit and cleaning solution. Your hands and feet get their own special treatment. They're wrapped in cloth soaked with herbs and oils that are supposed to keep your skin soft, but the cloth is rough, and the oils have a tendency to leak through and stain everything they touch. The oils are also slightly acidic, which means they make your skin tingle in a way that's probably not healthy, and they attract insects. You'll wake up with small bugs stuck to your hands and feet, trapped in the oily residue, and definitely dead by morning. Your hair gets braided with silk ribbons while you sleep, which sounds nice until you realize that the braiding process involves pulling your hair tight enough to give you a headache, and the ribbons are treated with some kind of stiffening agent that makes them scratchy. The braids are also supposed to stay perfect all night, which means you can't move your head without disturbing them. And if you do disturb them, a eunuch will wake you up to fix them. This happens several times a night, every night, for your entire reign as emperor. And then there's the issue of temperature. The Forbidden City is enormous, and your bedroom is at the center of it, which means it's insulated by layers of other rooms and corridors. In summer, this makes it unbearably hot, like sleeping inside an oven. In winter, it's freezing cold, like sleeping in a refrigerator. There's no middle ground. The palace has a heating system that involves burning charcoal in braziers, but the smoke has to go somewhere, and that somewhere is apparently your bedroom. So you get to choose between freezing to death or slowly suffocating on charcoal fumes while sweating through your imperial pajamas. The pajamas themselves are another source of misery. They're made from the finest silk in the empire, which sounds luxurious, but is actually terrible for sleeping. Silk doesn't breathe, which means you overheat immediately, and it's also incredibly delicate, which means you can't move without worrying about tearing something that cost more than most people's lifetime earnings. The pajamas are also the imperial yellow color, which is achieved using a dye made from some kind of mineral that apparently has a chemical reaction with human skin, because after wearing them for a few hours, you start to itch everywhere. But here's the thing that really sets imperial bedroom life apart from normal human experience: the bathroom situation. As emperor, you're not allowed to get up and walk to a bathroom like a regular person. Oh no, that would be beneath your dignity. Instead, you have what's called the imperial chamber pot, which is exactly what it sounds like, except it's made of gold and decorated with dragons and supposed to be an honor to use. The chamber pot lives under your bed, and when you need to use it, you're supposed to clap your hands twice, and a eunuch will retrieve it and hold it in the correct position while you do your business. This process involves several people, none of whom you particularly want to be involved in your bathroom routine, but imperial protocol is imperial protocol. The eunuch who holds the pot has to maintain eye contact with you the entire time, supposedly to show respect, but really it just makes everything incredibly awkward. After you're done, there's a whole ritual around cleaning and replacing the chamber pot, which involves more people and more eye contact, and a lot of bowing and ceremonial washing. The pot itself gets cleaned with special imperial cleaning solutions that smell like a combination of vinegar and flowers, but somehow never quite eliminate the underlying odor of human waste mixed with gold polish. And this is just your morning routine. We haven't even gotten to breakfast yet, which involves the monkey taste testing everything you eat, the peacock announcing each course, and a whole parade of eunuchs whose job it is to make sure you chew each bite the correct number of times, while sitting in the exact right position with the proper facial expression. Think again if you thought being emperor meant luxury and comfort. What it actually means is being constantly watched, constantly managed, constantly uncomfortable, and constantly accompanied by animals, with attitude problems while living in a palace that smells like a combination of expensive perfume and human suffering. The monkey, by the way, has just discovered something interesting in your hair, and is now making excited chattering sounds while the peacock responds with what sounds like mechanical laughter. Your day as the son of heaven has officially begun, and it's only going to get weirder from here. The chamber pot situation is just the beginning of your bathroom nightmare, because as emperor, you also can't just relieve yourself whenever nature calls. Oh no, that would be far too simple. There's something called the imperial bowel schedule, which is exactly what it sounds like, and it means your digestive system has to conform to a timetable that was designed by court astronomers, who apparently believed your intestines should align with the movements of celestial bodies. You're supposed to have your morning bowel movement at precisely the hour of the dragon, which is around 7 a.m., regardless of whether your body has any interest in cooperating. If you're early or late, it's considered a bad omen for the entire empire, which means there's a eunuch whose entire job is to monitor your digestive schedule and report any irregularities to the court astrologers. This person has to keep detailed records of the timing, consistency, and what they politely call the imperial fragrance of your bathroom visits. The monkey, meanwhile, has decided that your shoulder is his permanent residence and has begun grooming your earlobe with the dedication of someone performing brain surgery. His tiny fingers are surprisingly strong, and he's making small, satisfied grunting sounds while he works, like he's discovered something particularly fascinating about your ear hygiene. The peacock is moved closer to the bed and is now making softer, more conversational sounds, as if he's commenting on the monkey's grooming technique. But let's talk about breakfast, because that's where the morning really starts to go sideways. Your first meal of the day isn't just food. It's a performance that involves more people than most weddings and takes approximately 3 hours to complete. The process begins when a parade of eunuchs enters your bedroom, each carrying a different component of what they call the Imperial Dawn Feast, which sounds appetizing until you see what's actually involved. The first course is always the same: a bowl of congee that's been cooking since yesterday and has the consistency of library paste mixed with warm spit. It's made from rice that's been boiled so long it's lost any structural integrity and has become a gray, lumpy porridge that sticks to everything it touches. The congee is supposed to be flavored with precious herbs and spices, but mostly it tastes like wet cardboard with a vague hint of something that might have been ginger at some point in its previous life. This congee isn't just served in any bowl. Oh no. It comes in the Imperial Dawn Bowl, which is made of jade and carved with dragons, and is so heavy that the eunuch who carries it needs both hands and visible, strained just to transport it from the kitchen to your bedside. The bowl is also ice cold, because jade doesn't hold heat, which means your hot congee becomes lukewarm sludge the moment it makes contact with the serving vessel. But here's where the monkey situation becomes really problematic. See, precious jade has been trained to taste test everything you eat, supposedly to protect you from poison, but really because some ancient emperor thought it would be amusing to watch a monkey eat imperial food. The monkey takes his job very seriously and insists on sampling everything before you're allowed to take a bite. This means he climbs down from your shoulder, dips his tiny hands directly into your congee, pulls out a handful of the gray paste, and eats it while making loud smacking sounds and occasionally spitting out bits he doesn't like. After the monkey's quality control process, your congee now has monkey handprints in it, monkey saliva mixed throughout, and several small pieces of whatever the monkey had stuck between his teeth. The eunuchs pretend this is perfectly normal and continue with the breakfast service, as if you're not about to eat food that's been pre-chewed by a small primate with questionable hygiene. The second course is tea, which sounds simple until you learn about the imperial tea ceremony, which involves 17 different types of tea leaves, each brewed in a separate pot, each requiring a different water temperature, and each designed to complement a different aspect of your imperial constitution. The tea master, a eunuch who spent his entire life studying the proper preparation of imperial beverages, explains the significance of each tea, while the monkey perches on the teapot handles and occasionally dips his tail into the hot water. The teas themselves have names like Dragonwell Morning Mist and Phoenix Pearl Celestial Harmony, but they all taste like hot water that's been filtered through old socks. Some of them are supposed to aid digestion. Others are meant to sharpen your mental faculties, and one is specifically designed to make your breath smell like flowers, though it actually makes your mouth taste like you've been chewing on a bouquet that's been sitting in a vase for 3 weeks. The tea is served in cups so small, you need about 15 of them to equal one normal-sized drink, and each cup has to be held in a specific way, with your pinky finger extended at exactly the right angle, while making appreciative humming sounds after each sip. The monkey watches this entire performance with what can only be described as professional interest, occasionally chittering what sounds like commentary on your tea-drinking technique. The third course is where things get really interesting, and by interesting, I mean disgusting. It's called the Imperial Protein Selection, which is a fancy way of saying various animals that have been prepared in ways that will make you question your life choices. Today's selection includes bird's nest soup, which is exactly what it sounds like. Actual bird nests that have been boiled until they're soft enough to swallow. These aren't just any bird nests. They're specifically swallow nests, and they're harvested from caves where the birds build them using their own saliva as a binding agent. So you're essentially eating bird spit that's been shaped into a nest and boiled in broth. The texture is like eating rubber bands that have been soaked in warm water, and the flavor is indescribable, sort of like chicken broth, mixed with the taste you get when you accidentally bite your tongue. The monkey, naturally, wants to taste test this as well, so he climbs into the soup bowl and starts fishing out pieces of bird nest with his hands, examining them carefully before either eating them or flinging them across the room if they don't meet his standards. By the time he's finished his inspection, your soup looks like it's been stirred by a tiny, furry tornado, and there are bits of bird nest stuck to the walls where the monkey's quality control process got a little too enthusiastic. But wait, there's more protein. The next dish is something called 1,000-year eggs, which aren't actually 1,000 years old, but they've been preserved in clay and ash for several months until they've turned black and developed a cheese-like consistency that immediately sticks to the roof of your mouth. The eggs smell like sulfur mixed with old gin socks, and when you bite into one, it makes a sound like stepping on a wet sponge. The monkey takes one look at the 1,000-year eggs and makes a face that clearly indicates he has standards, even if those standards are mysteriously flexible when it comes to grooming your ears with his saliva-covered fingers. He refuses to taste test this dish, which should probably tell you something about its palatability, but imperial protocol requires you to eat at least 3 eggs, while expressing gratitude for their nutritional value and unique flavor profile. The eggs are served on a plate made of silver that's been polished until it reflects everything, which means you can see exactly what you're putting in your mouth from multiple angles. The reflection shows the eggs in all their blackened, gelatinous glory, and also shows your own face as you try to chew something that has the texture of firm Jell-O and the taste of rotten vegetables mixed with metal polish. The fourth course is fruit, which sounds refreshing until you learn that imperial fruit has to be carved into elaborate, shapes before it can be served to the Son of Heaven. Your morning apple doesn't just get sliced, it gets transformed into a sculpture of a dragon, complete with scales carved into the skin and tiny legs made from apple pieces. This process takes about an hour and results in an apple that's been handled so much it's warm and slightly sticky, with tool marks all over it from the carving process. The dragon apple is presented on a jade plate alongside a pear that's been carved to look like a phoenix, complete with feathers etched into the skin and a tail made from pear slices arranged in a fan pattern. The pear carving process involves so much cutting and reshaping that most of the actual fruit has been removed, leaving you with a decorative sculpture that's about 30% pear and 70% artistic ambition. The monkey finds the fruit carvings fascinating and insists on inspecting each piece by climbing onto the plate and examining the carved details with his tiny hands. This means your fruit gets monkey fingerprints all over it, and occasionally the monkey will test the structural integrity of the carvings by poking them until pieces break off. By the time he's finished his inspection, your dragon apple looks like it's been in a fight, and your phoenix pear is missing most of its tail feathers. But the fruit course isn't over yet, because there's also something called imperial juice, which is made from fruits that have been specially grown in the palace gardens, using water that's been blessed by monks and soil that's been enriched with what they politely call imperial fertilizer, but which is actually human waste from previous emperors. This gives the fruit a very distinctive flavor that's sort of sweet, but with an underlying earthiness that makes you think of things you'd rather not think about while eating. The juice is served in a crystal cup that's so delicate it flexes slightly when you hold it, and you're supposed to drink it in small, contemplative sips while reflecting on the connection between the emperor and the earth. The monkey watches this process with great interest and occasionally tries to grab the cup to investigate its contents, which means you're constantly trying to drink imperial fertilizer juice while preventing a small primate from either stealing your beverage or falling into it. The fifth course is what they call imperial grain, which is rice that's been prepared using a process that involves no fewer than 12 different cooking methods, each applied to different portions of the same batch of rice. Some of it is steamed, some is boiled, some is fried, some is roasted, and some is prepared using techniques that don't seem to have names but result in rice that has the texture of small pebbles and makes a crunching sound when you chew it. This rice is served in a bowl that's divided into 12 sections, each containing rice prepared by a different method, and you're supposed to eat from each section in a specific order, while contemplating the various ways that grain can be transformed through the application of heat and time. The monkey finds this variety fascinating and moves systematically through the bowl, sampling each type of rice and making small commentary sounds that suggest he has opinions about the different preparation methods. Some of the rice varieties are actually not terrible, but others have been so overcooked or undercooked, or weirdly cooked that they've achieved textures that rice was never meant to have. There's one section that contains rice that's been cooked until it's turned into a kind of crispy shell, and another section where the rice has been boiled so long it's become a sticky mass that adheres to your teeth and requires significant jaw work to process. The peacock, who has been relatively quiet during the early part of breakfast, becomes more vocal during the grain course, making small peeping sounds that seem to correspond with your chewing rhythm. It's like having a feathered metronome providing a soundtrack to your imperial dining experience, except the metronome occasionally breaks into full peacock screaming when you take too long to chew a particularly challenging piece of crispy rice. The sixth course is soup, but not just any soup. This is imperial bone broth, which has been simmering for 3 days using bones from animals that were specially raised for this purpose and fed a diet designed to optimize the nutritional content of their skeletal systems. The broth is supposed to be crystal clear and deeply flavorful, but it actually looks like slightly tinted water and tastes like what you'd get if you boiled leather boots for several hours. The soup is served at a temperature that can only be described as molten, which means you have to wait for it to cool down before you can take a sip without burning your tongue. But you also can't wait too long, because there's a specific temperature window during which the soup is considered to be at its optimal imperial consumption temperature. And if you miss this window, the soup has to be taken away and reheated, which involves another 20-minute ceremony. The monkey has learned to test the soup temperature by dipping his finger into the broth and then shaking his hand vigorously if it's too hot. This is helpful information, but it also means your soup has been finger tested by a monkey whose hygiene standards are questionable at best. The peacock seems to have opinions about the soup as well, and expresses them through a series of soft warbling sounds that might be appreciation or might be digestive commentary. The seventh and final course of breakfast is what they call the Imperial Sweet Conclusion, which is a selection of candied fruits and honeyed nuts that have been arranged in patterns that supposedly represent various celestial constellations. The candied fruits have been soaked in honey for so long that they've lost any resemblance to their original forms and have become chewy, overly sweet lumps that stick to your teeth and make your jaw ache from the concentrated sugar content. The nuts have been candied as well, which means they're covered in a hard sugar shell that you have to crack with your teeth before you can get to the actual nut inside. This process is loud and involves a lot of crunching sounds that echo off the walls of your bedroom and seem to excite the peacock, who responds to each crunch with an enthusiastic peep. By the time you finish the Imperial Sweet Conclusion, your mouth feels like it's been coated with sticky syrup, your teeth are sore from all the crunching, and you can taste honey in everything, including your own saliva. The monkey, who has sampled each type of candied fruit and honeyed nut, is now slightly hyperactive from the sugar intake and has begun bouncing around the room, chattering excitedly and occasionally doing small acrobatic maneuvers on the furniture. And that's just breakfast. The entire meal has taken nearly 3 hours, involved more people than most dinner parties, and resulted in you consuming foods that range from merely unpleasant to actively disgusting, all while being monitored by a monkey with boundary issues and serenaded by a peacock with questionable timing. But congratulations, you've successfully completed the Imperial Dawn Feast. And now it's time to move on to the next phase of your Imperial morning routine, which involves getting dressed in clothing that's designed to make you look magnificent while ensuring you're as uncomfortable as humanly possible. The Imperial Wardrobe ceremony is about to begin, and it involves more layers of clothing than most people wear in an entire winter, each piece requiring its own specific putting on ritual, and each designed to restrict your movement in a different and creative way. The monkey will be helping with this process, naturally, because apparently there's no aspect of imperial life that doesn't benefit from the assistance of a small primate with strong opinions about fabric. The dressing process begins with what they call the Imperial Foundation layer, which sounds dignified until you realize it's essentially a full-body bandage made from silk that's been soaked in herbal oils that smell like someone boiled old vegetables in perfume. This undergarment wraps around your entire torso and has to be wound tight enough to compress your internal organs into what the court physicians consider the ideal imperial silhouette. The silk foundation layer is applied while you're standing with your arms extended, and it takes 4 eunuchs working in perfect coordination to wrap you properly. The process starts at your ankles and works its way up, each layer of silk overlapping the previous one by exactly 2 finger widths, because apparently there's a mathematical formula for imperial underwear that was developed by scholars who had nothing better to do with their lives. The monkey perches on your head during this process, occasionally reaching down to pat the silk as it's being applied, as if he's supervising the quality of the wrapping technique. His tiny hands leave damp prints on the silk, and he makes small chittering sounds that seem to indicate either approval or criticism of the eunuch's work. The peacock has positioned himself near the wardrobe and provides a running commentary of soft peeps and occasional full-volume screeches when he disagrees with a particular wrapping decision. The herbal oils that have been applied to the silk are supposed to have medicinal properties that will keep your imperial constitution in perfect balance throughout the day. In reality, they make the silk stick to your skin in uncomfortable ways and create a layer of moisture that makes everything feel slightly damp and clingy. The oils also have a warming effect that sounds pleasant until you realize it means you're going to be uncomfortably hot all day, regardless of the weather outside. Once the foundation layer is complete, you're essentially mummified from neck to toe in sticky silk that restricts your breathing and makes it impossible to bend at the waist without feeling like you're going to tear. Something important. The eunuchs step back to admire their handiwork, while the monkey climbs down to inspect the wrapping more closely, occasionally tugging at loose ends and making small adjustments that probably undo hours of careful positioning. The next layer is the imperial modesty garment, which is basically a silk robe that goes over the foundation layer and adds another level of restriction to your already limited range of motion. This garment is bright yellow, naturally, and decorated with embroidered dragons that have been stitched using gold thread. The embroidery looks magnificent from a distance, but feels like wearing a shirt covered in tiny metal wires that poke into your skin with every movement. The gold thread embroidery also has weight to it, which means the robe hangs heavy on your shoulders and pulls downward in ways that make your neck ache. The dragons are positioned across your chest and back, and their embroidered scales create a texture that's roughly equivalent to wearing a shirt made from very expensive sandpaper. Every time you move, the gold thread catches on the silk foundation layer underneath, creating small pulling sensations across your torso. The robe fastens with a complex system of silk ties that have to be knotted in a specific pattern that supposedly represents the harmony between heaven and earth. The tying process takes about 20 minutes and requires the eunuchs to reach around your body from multiple angles while the monkey critiques their knot tying technique and occasionally tries to help by grabbing loose ends of silk and pulling them in directions that definitely don't contribute to celestial harmony. The third layer is what they call the Imperial Dignity Vest, which is a sleeveless garment made from brocade that's so heavily decorated it barely qualifies as fabric anymore. The brocade is woven with patterns that tell the story of your imperial ancestors, which would be interesting if the patterns weren't created using threads that have been treated with metallic compounds that make the entire vest feel like wearing a piece of flexible armor. The vest is lined with more of that herbal silk, except this batch has been treated with different oils that smell like a combination of medicinal herbs and something that might have been food at some point, but has since achieved a state of preservation that defies natural decomposition. The lining sticks to the modesty garment underneath, creating layers of fabric that slide against each other in ways that produce small squeaking sounds when you move. The vest also has pockets, but they're not for carrying things. They're ceremonial pockets that are sewn shut and contain small sachets of dried herbs that are supposed to provide spiritual protection and ward off evil influences. The sachets make small crunching sounds when you move, and occasionally one will tear open and release a puff of herb dust that makes you sneeze, while wearing a full face of imperial makeup. The fourth layer is the imperial outer robe, which is the garment that everyone will actually see, and it's designed to make you look like the son of heaven while ensuring you can barely move your arms. The outer robe is made from silk that's been dyed using a process that involves actual gold dust, which gives it a luminous quality that photographs beautifully, but also makes the fabric slightly abrasive against your skin. The robe has sleeves that extend well beyond your hands and are designed to flow gracefully when you gesture, except they also catch on everything you pass and have a tendency to dip into your food when you're trying to eat. The sleeves are lined with a different type of silk that has a slightly different texture, which means the inner and outer layers of the sleeves rub against each other constantly, creating a soft swooshing sound that follows you everywhere you go. The outer robe also has a train that extends several feet behind you and requires a dedicated eunuch, whose job is to carry it and make sure it doesn't get stepped on or caught on furniture. This means you're constantly followed by someone whose entire professional focus is the back hem of your clothing, and you can hear him shuffling along behind you, making small adjustments to the train's positioning throughout the day. But we're not done with layers yet, because now comes the Imperial belt system, which is less a belt and more a complex harness, made from silk cords that wrap around your waist multiple times and connect to various points on all the previous layers of clothing. The belt system is designed to keep everything properly positioned and prevent any of your garments from shifting or bunching up in ways that might compromise your Imperial dignity. The belt cords are made from silk that's been braided so tightly it feels more like rope than fabric, and they have to be tied with enough tension to keep all your layers in place, but not so tight that you pass out from lack of circulation. Finding this balance requires the eunuchs to have extensive knowledge of human anatomy and experience with what they politely call Imperial breathing requirements. The monkey finds the belt tying process fascinating and insists on helping by grabbing cords and pulling them in random directions while making excited chattering sounds. His assistance adds about 15 minutes to the process and results in several false starts when his help causes carefully positioned knots to come undone. The peacock seems to find the monkey's participation amusing and provides a soundtrack of soft warbling sounds that might be laughter. The belt system also includes several ceremonial ornaments that hang from the cords and make small chiming sounds when you walk. These ornaments are made from jade and precious metals and are supposed to create a pleasant musical accompaniment to your Imperial movements. In reality, they clank together constantly and create a sound like someone playing very small, very expensive wind chimes in a minor key. Now comes the footwear situation, which is where things get really problematic. Imperial shoes aren't just shoes. They're architectural achievements that happen to go on your feet. They're made from silk and leather and have platforms that add about 4 inches to your height, which sounds impressive until you realize you have to walk in them while wearing all those layers of restrictive clothing. The shoes have pointed toes that extend several inches beyond your actual toes, which means you're constantly in danger of tripping over your own feet. The points are stuffed with cotton to help them maintain their shape, but the cotton has a tendency to shift and bunch up, creating uncomfortable lumps that press against your toes and make walking even more challenging than the platform. Heels already do. The shoes also have silk laces that have to be wrapped around your ankles and calves in a specific pattern that takes about 10 minutes per foot to complete properly. The lacing process requires you to balance on one foot while eunuchs work on the other, which is difficult enough under normal circumstances, but becomes nearly impossible when you're wearing multiple layers of restrictive silk robes and being supervised by a monkey who has opinions about your balance. The monkey, incidentally, has decided that shoelacing time is perfect for grooming your hair. So while you're trying to maintain your balance and the eunuchs are working on your footwear, you also have a small primate rearranging your hairstyle with his saliva-covered fingers. This creates a multitasking challenge that would be impressive if it weren't so deeply uncomfortable. But wait, there's more footwear. Over the silk shoes, you have to wear ceremonial slippers that are made from brocade and decorated with the same gold thread embroidery as your robes. These slippers don't actually provide any protection or support. They're purely decorative and designed to coordinate with your outfit while making it even more difficult to walk normally. The ceremonial slippers have silk ribbons that tie around your ankles, but the ribbons are treated with the same stiffening agent as the hair ribbons from your nighttime routine, which means they're scratchy and uncomfortable and leave marks on your skin. The slippers also have small bells attached to the ribbons, because apparently the chiming ornaments on your belt aren't providing enough musical accompaniment to your daily activities. Now we get to the headwear situation, which is where the imperial wardrobe ceremony reaches its peak of elaborate discomfort. Your hat isn't just a hat. It's a sculptural achievement that weighs approximately 15 pounds and requires its own structural support system to keep from falling off your head and potentially causing serious neck injury. The imperial crown is made from gold that's been shaped into an intricate design featuring dragons, phoenixes, and various celestial symbols. The gold has been polished until it reflects light in all directions, which creates a magnificent visual effect, but also means you're essentially wearing a mirror on your head that blinds everyone around you whenever you turn toward a light source. The crown sits on a silk cap that's supposed to distribute the weight evenly across that fits tightly over your head and has padding your skull. The padding is made from cotton that's been treated with oils that smell like a combination of old leather and medicinal herbs, and it has a tendency to shift during the day, creating pressure points that give you headaches that last until you're finally allowed to remove the crown at bedtime. The crown also has dangling ornaments that hang down around your face and make soft chiming sounds when you move your head. These ornaments are made from jade and precious metals and are beautiful to look at, but they also obstruct your peripheral vision and occasionally swing into your eyes when you turn too quickly. The monkey finds these dangling ornaments irresistible and frequently tries to grab them, which results in him accidentally pulling on the crown and causing it to shift position on your head. But the crown is just the beginning of your headwear ensemble. Over the crown, you wear what's called the Imperial Dignity Plume, which is a collection of feathers from various rare birds that have been arranged in a fan, patterned and attached to the back of the crown. The plume adds another several inches to your height and creates a dramatic silhouette, but it also catches every breeze and has a tendency to shed feathers onto your shoulders throughout the day. The feathers in the plume have been treated with preservatives that keep them from decaying, but also give them a slightly chemical smell and a texture that's somehow both stiff and greasy at the same time. When the wind blows, the plume makes a soft rustling sound that's probably meant to be majestic, but mostly just reminds you that you're wearing dead birds on your head. The peacock seems to have complicated feelings about the feather plume and expresses them through a series of soft peeping sounds that might be appreciation for the craftsmanship or concern about the fate of his fellow birds. The monkey, meanwhile, is fascinated by the plume and makes repeated attempts to climb up and investigate it, which requires constant vigilance from the eunuchs to prevent him from destroying several $1,000s worth of rare bird feathers. Now comes the jewelry phase of the imperial wardrobe ceremony, which involves adorning your already heavily accessorized body with additional ornaments that serve no practical purpose, but are apparently essential for maintaining your connection to the celestial realm. The jewelry isn't just jewelry. It's a collection of spiritual artifacts that have been blessed by monks and designed to channel divine energy directly into your imperial person. The first piece is the imperial neck collar, which is made from gold and jade and wraps around your throat like a very expensive choker. The collar is heavy enough to make turning your head difficult and tight enough to make swallowing uncomfortable, but it's also supposed to protect your voice, which is considered sacred, from any negative influences that might affect your ability to issue imperial decrees. The collar has small bells attached to it that ring softly whenever you speak, which creates a musical accompaniment to your imperial pronouncements, but also means you can never speak quietly or privately. because every word is announced by tiny chimes. The monkey finds the neck bells particularly interesting and frequently tries to ring them by patting the collar, which requires you to constantly prevent a small primate from essentially strangling you with his curiosity. The second piece of jewelry is the imperial wrist cuffs, which are wide bracelets made from silver and decorated with precious stones. The cuffs are designed to cover your wrists completely and extend several inches up your forearms, which looks impressive, but also makes it impossible to bend your wrists normally. The cuffs are also heavy enough to make your arms tired after wearing them for a few hours. The wrist cuffs have chains that connect them to rings on your fingers, which means your hands and arms are literally connected by precious metal links. This creates a tinkling sound when you move your hands and ensures that you can never gesture naturally, because every movement of your fingers affects the position of your wrists and vice versa. The finger rings themselves are another source of discomfort. You wear one ring on each finger, and each ring is made from a different precious metal and set with a different type of gemstone that's supposed to provide specific spiritual benefits. The rings are sized to fit over silk gloves, which means they're too large for your actual fingers and slide around constantly, occasionally catching on the chains that connect them to your wrist cuffs. The third major piece of jewelry is the imperial chest medallion, which is essentially a large decorative plate made from gold and precious stones that hangs from a heavy chain around your neck. The medallion rests on your chest and adds several more pounds to the weight you're already carrying from the crown, collar, and cuffs. The chain that supports the medallion is long enough that the medallion bounces against your torso when you walk, creating a rhythmic tapping sound that accompanies your footsteps. The medallion itself is decorated with an intricate carving that tells the story of your imperial lineage, which would be meaningful if you could actually see it. Unfortunately, the medallion hangs below your line of sight, so you have to take everyone else's word for it that you're wearing a masterpiece of imperial craftsmanship on your chest. But we're still not done with the jewelry, because there are also the imperial ear ornaments, which are essentially chandeliers for your ears. These ornaments hang from your earlobes and extend down to your shoulders, creating a curtain of precious metals and gemstones on either side of your face. The ear ornaments are beautiful and probably worth more than most people's houses, but they're also heavy enough to make your earlobes ache and long, enough to catch on your collar and shoulder ornaments when you turn your head. The ear ornaments also chime when you move, adding another layer to the musical accompaniment that follows you everywhere. Between the neck collar bells, the wrist cuff chains, the chest medallion tapping, and the ear ornament chiming, you sound like a one-person orchestra with every step you take. The monkey seems to find your musical jewelry fascinating and frequently tries to play with the various chiming elements, which creates additional random notes in your personal soundtrack. The peacock responds to these musical interventions with his own vocalizations, turning your daily activities into an impromptu concert performed by you, a monkey, and a bird with questionable musical taste. Now comes the final phase of the imperial wardrobe ceremony, which involves the application of what they call enhancement accessories, which are basically additional decorative elements that attach to various parts of your already heavily accessorized outfit. These accessories serve no practical purpose whatsoever, but are apparently essential for achieving the full imperial aesthetic. The first enhancement accessory is the imperial shoulder cascade, which is a collection of silk ribbons and small ornaments that attach to your shoulders and flow down your back, like a waterfall of expensive fabric. The cascade looks elegant when you're standing still, but becomes problematic when you try to move, because the ribbons have a tendency to catch on things, and the ornaments clank together when you walk. The shoulder cascade also has small bells woven into the ribbons, because apparently you weren't making enough noise already. These bells are tuned to different notes and are supposed to create harmonious chimes when you move, but mostly they just add to the cacophony of sounds that accompanies your daily routine. The second enhancement accessory is the Imperial Hip Drape, which is essentially a decorative skirt that attaches to your belt system and hangs down over your outer robe. The hip drape is made from silk that's been embroidered with gold thread and decorated with precious stones, and it adds another layer of weight and restriction to your already cumbersome outfit. The hip drape also has fringe along the bottom edge, and the fringe has small ornaments attached to each strand. These ornaments tap against your legs when you walk and create yet another rhythmic sound to add to your personal percussion section. The monkey finds the fringe irresistible and frequently tries to play with it, which results in him accidentally pulling on your hip drape and causing it to shift position around your waist. The third enhancement accessory is the Imperial Back Banner, which is exactly what it sounds like. A small flag that attaches to the back of your crown and displays your imperial symbol for everyone behind you to see. The banner is made from silk that's been painted with dyes that are supposed to be permanent, but actually have a tendency to run when exposed to moisture, which means your imperial symbol occasionally drips onto your shoulder cascade when you sweat. The banner also catches wind and flaps dramatically when you're outdoors, which creates a snapping sound that startles the peacock and causes him to respond with defensive screeching. The combination of banner flapping and peacock screeching creates an audio environment that makes outdoor imperial activities sound like a small war is breaking out wherever you go. The fourth and final enhancement accessory is the Imperial Dignity Sash, which is a wide ribbon that goes diagonally across your torso and connects to various points on your other garments to create what the court designers call visual flow. The sash is made from silk that's been woven with metallic threads that catch the light beautifully, but also make the sash stiff and uncomfortable against your body. The sash has embroidered text along its length that supposedly contains imperial mottos and philosophical sayings, but the text is written in a calligraphy style that's so elaborate it's essentially unreadable. The sash also has tassels at both ends that hang down and sway when you move, adding another element of movement to your already dynamic outfit. By the time the imperial wardrobe ceremony is complete, you're wearing approximately 30 pounds of clothing, jewelry, and accessories, and you sound like a percussion ensemble with every step you take. The monkey has managed to attach himself to various parts of your outfit and is now essentially a living accessory who provides running commentary on your appearance through a series of chattering sounds and occasional grooming sessions. The peacock has positioned himself as your unofficial honor guard and follows you at a distance of about 6 feet, occasionally calling out what might be encouragement or might be criticism of your fashion choices. Together, the three of you form a mobile imperial entourage that announces its presence through a combination of chiming, chattering, screeching, and the soft shuffle of silk against silk. The entire dressing process has taken approximately 2 hours, involved 8 different eunuchs with specialized knowledge of imperial fashion, and resulted in you being transformed from a relatively normal human, being into a walking work of art that can barely move and makes noise with every breath. You are now ready to begin your imperial day, which will involve sitting very still for long periods of time while people bow to you and trying not to let any of your accessories fall off or get tangled together. Congratulations, you are now fully dressed as the Son of Heaven, which means you look magnificent, sound like a wind chime factory, and feel like you're wearing a very expensive straitjacket that someone has decorated with every piece of precious metal and silk in the empire. The monkey seems pleased with the final result and has settled into a position on your shoulder where he can supervise your daily activities while occasionally adjusting your jewelry when it doesn't meet his standards. The peacock has given his approval through a series of soft, warbling sounds that might be applause or might be sympathy for your plight. Either way, You're now ready to face the world as the Emperor of China, assuming you can figure out how to walk without tripping over your own feet or getting strangled by your own accessories. The morning light is starting to filter through the yellow silk curtains, creating golden patterns on the walls and highlighting the dust motes that dance in the air around your heavily accessorized form. Somewhere in the distance, you can hear the sounds of the Forbidden City waking up. Servants hurrying through corridors, other animals making their morning announcements, and the general bustle of a palace that revolves around your every need and whim. But first, you need to figure out how to actually leave your bedroom while wearing an outfit that weighs more than some furniture and makes more noise than a small marching band. The monkey seems confident in your abilities and has started making encouraging chittering sounds, while the peacock has begun what might be a motivational speech delivered in bird language at volumes that suggests he believes you might be slightly deaf. Your imperial day is about to begin, and it's going to be a long one. Your imperial day doesn't actually begin with leaving your bedroom. Oh no, that would be far too simple. First comes the Imperial Morning Court preparation ritual, which involves approximately 40 people descending upon your heavily accessorized form like a swarm of silk-clad locusts, each with their own specialized task that somehow makes your existing discomfort exponentially worse. The monkey, who has been relatively well-behaved during the dressing ceremony, suddenly develops strong opinions about the approaching crowd of eunuchs and begins making agitated chittering sounds while pulling on your ear ornaments. This creates a discordant chiming that competes with the peacock's morning announcements, which have escalated from soft warbles to full-volume territorial calls that echo off the gold-plated walls and make your already aching head throb in rhythm with the sound waves. The first wave of eunuchs arrives carrying what they call the Imperial Freshening Implements, which sounds refreshing until you realize it's a collection of damp cloths that have been soaked in various herbal solutions that smell like someone boiled old socks in medicinal tea. These cloths are applied to any exposed skin to remove the overnight accumulation of beauty paste residue and herbal oil seepage, which means someone is essentially wiping you down like a very expensive, very ornate piece of furniture while you stand there wearing 30 pounds of ceremonial clothing. The wiping process is thorough and involves multiple people working on different body parts simultaneously. One eunuch handles your face, dabbing at your forehead and cheeks with a cloth that feels like damp burlap and leaves behind the scent of fermented ginger mixed with what might be vinegar. Another works on your hands, cleaning between your fingers where the overnight treatments have left a sticky residue that makes your skin feel like it's been dipped in honey that's gone slightly rancid. The monkey finds this group grooming session fascinating and attempts to participate by grabbing cloths from the eunuchs and wiping random parts of your outfit. His assistance is not helpful, as he tends to use the cleaning cloths on areas that don't need cleaning while leaving monkey handprints on areas that were just cleaned. The eunuchs tolerate this with the patience of people who have clearly dealt with worse things in their careers, occasionally redirecting the monkey's efforts when he starts trying to clean the inside of your ear ornaments. The second wave of eunuchs arrives with the Imperial Scent Application Kit, which is a collection of small bottles containing various perfumes and oils that are supposed to create what they call the Imperial Aromatic Signature. This signature is achieved by applying different scents to different parts of your body, creating a complex olfactory profile that supposedly reflects your divine nature, but mostly just makes you smell like a flower shop that's been closed for several weeks in humid weather. The scent application process is precise and involves dabbing specific perfumes on your pulse points, using small silk pads that have been soaked in the various oils. The oils themselves have been aged in special containers for months, which is supposed to improve their quality, but actually just means they've had time to develop interesting secondary fermentation notes that add complexity to their original floral base. By the time all the scents have been applied, you smell like a garden that's been fertilized with something organic and left to compost in the sun. The peacock seems to have opinions about your new aromatic profile and expresses them through a series of sneezing, sounds followed by indignant squawking. The monkey, meanwhile, is fascinated by the various scent bottles and keeps trying to investigate them by dipping his fingers into the oils and then wiping them on your clothing, which adds his own personal aromatic contribution to your imperial signature. The third wave of eunuchs brings the imperial posture correction apparatus, which is essentially a collection of small cushions, supports, and braces that attach to various parts of your outfit to ensure you maintain perfect imperial posture throughout the day. These devices are designed to keep your spine straight, your shoulders back, and your head held at exactly the right angle to project divine authority. The posture apparatus includes a small cushion that gets inserted between your shoulder blades and your outer robe, which feels like having a lumpy pillow permanently wedged against your back. There's also a brace that attaches to your collar and extends down to your belt system, which keeps your neck from bending forward, but also makes it impossible to look down at your feet, which is going to be problematic when you try to navigate stairs while wearing platform shoes with pointed toes. The most uncomfortable part of a posture system is the hip alignment device, which is basically a rigid panel that gets inserted into your hip drape and extends from your waist to your thighs. This device ensures that you maintain proper imperial bearing while walking, but it also means you can only take very small, careful steps and you can't bend at the waist without feeling like you're going to snap something important. The monkey watches the installation of the posture apparatus with great interest and occasionally tests the various components by poking them or trying to climb on them. His quality control process adds about 20 minutes to the fitting procedure and results in several adjustments when his exploration reveals that certain support structures make excellent climbing opportunities for small primates with boundary issues. The fourth wave of eunuchs arrives with the Imperial Voice Preparation Kit, which includes throat sprays, mouth rinses, and breathing exercises designed to ensure that your imperial pronouncements have the proper resonance and authority. The throat spray tastes like liquid metal mixed with herbs that might have been medicinal at some point, but have since achieved a flavor profile that defies natural classification. The mouth rinse is worse. It's made from ingredients that include something called imperial honey, which isn't honey at all, but some kind of tree sap that's been fermented until it reaches a consistency somewhere between syrup and paste. The rinse is supposed to coat your throat and give your voice a rich, resonant quality, but mostly it just makes everything taste like you've been chewing on old wooden furniture that's been soaked in sweet and sour sauce. The breathing exercises involve a series of deep inhalations and controlled exhalations while the eunuchs monitor your technique and offer corrections. These exercises would be relaxing if you weren't wearing multiple layers of restrictive clothing and a 15-pound crown that shifts slightly every time you breathe deeply. The monkey finds your breathing exercises entertaining and provides his own respiratory accompaniment, which creates a call and response pattern that probably wasn't part of the original Imperial voice training curriculum. The fifth wave of eunuchs brings the Imperial Day Planning Briefing, which involves a detailed review of your schedule, while more people make final adjustments to your outfit and accessories. This briefing takes place while you're standing in the center of your bedroom, surrounded by eunuchs, wearing 30 pounds of ceremonial clothing, smelling like fermented flowers, and being supervised by a monkey who has decided that your crown ornaments make excellent toys. The schedule briefing reveals that your day will include approximately 14 different ceremonial activities, each requiring you to sit, stand, or walk in specific ways while maintaining perfect posture and making appropriate imperial gestures. You'll be receiving visitors, reviewing documents, participating in rituals, and generally being the son of heaven for about 12 hours straight while wearing an outfit that makes normal human movement nearly impossible. The monkey seems to understand that a long day is ahead and has begun making small hoarding gestures, collecting bits of silk ribbon and small ornaments from your outfit and hiding them in various parts of his fur. The peacock has positioned himself near the door and is making what sound like preparatory announcements, as if he's warming up his voice for a day of providing audio accompaniment to your imperial activities. But before you can begin any of your scheduled activities, there's one more preparation ritual that somehow manages to be even more uncomfortable than everything that's come before. The Imperial Mobility Assessment involves testing your ability to perform basic movements while wearing your complete Imperial outfit, and it reveals just how thoroughly your range of motion has been compromised by the pursuit of divine fashion. The mobility assessment begins with walking. You're asked to take 10 steps forward, which sounds simple until you realize that your pointed shoes extend several inches beyond your feet. Your hip alignment device restricts your stride length, and your shoulder cascade catches on your arm ornaments every time you swing your arms. The result is a movement style that can best be described as shuffling with dignity, and it produces a symphony of chiming, clanking, and rustling sounds that announces your presence from several rooms away. The monkey decides that your modified walking style is fascinating and begins imitating it, taking tiny shuffling steps alongside you while making commentary sounds that might be encouragement or might be mockery. The peacock responds to this performance by spreading his tail feathers and making what sound like applause calls, turning your mobility assessment into an impromptu talent show. Next comes the sitting assessment, which reveals that sitting down while wearing imperial regalia is less in action and more a carefully choreographed engineering project. The process requires 3 eunuchs to manage your various layers of clothing, 1 to support your crown, and 1 to make sure your ornaments don't get tangled together as you lower yourself onto the throne. The actual sitting motion takes about 2 minutes and involves a complex sequence of movements that have to be performed in exactly the right order to avoid damaging your outfit or causing your accessories to shift into uncomfortable positions. Once you're finally seated, you discover that the posture support system makes it impossible to lean back against the throne, which means you have to maintain perfect upright posture through sheer muscle control for however long you're required to sit. The monkey finds your sitting technique educational and attempts to replicate it by climbing onto a nearby cushion and lowering himself, very slowly, while making small grunting sounds of effort. His interpretation of imperial sitting involves a lot more tail positioning than your version, but he seems pleased with his performance and makes small chittering sounds that might be self-congratulation. The standing assessment reveals that getting up from a seated position is even more complicated than sitting down. The process requires you to shift your weight forward without leaning too far and disturbing your crown. Push yourself up using only your leg muscles, since your arm movement is restricted by your wrist cuffs and chest ornaments, and maintain your balance while multiple layers of clothing settle back into their proper positions. The whole standing process is made more challenging by the fact that your platform shoes have a tendency to stick to silk cushions, which means you have to pull your feet free with each step while maintaining imperial dignity. The monkey watches this performance with great interest and offers assistance by grabbing onto your hip drape and pulling, which doesn't actually help, but does add an element of unpredictability to the process. The final part of the mobility assessment involves testing your ability to make imperial gestures while wearing your complete outfit. Imperial gestures are apparently very specific movements that have to be performed in exactly the right way to convey proper divine authority. These gestures include pointing, which is complicated by your wrist cuffs and finger chains, waving, which causes your sleeve ornaments to make distracting chiming sounds, and the imperial blessing gesture, which requires you to raise both hands simultaneously without getting your various accessories tangled together. The monkey seems to understand that gestures are important and begins practicing his own version of imperial movements, which mostly involve waving his arms dramatically and making small screeching sounds. The peacock responds to this gestural display by performing what might be his own interpretation of imperial posture, puffing out his chest and making dignified warbling sounds. By the time the imperial morning court preparation ritual is complete, you've been standing in your bedroom for approximately 3 hours, while dozens of people have poked, prodded, wiped, scented, supported, and assessed every aspect of your imperial presentation. You smell like a fermented flower garden. You can barely move without making noise, and you have a monkey attached to your shoulder who has appointed himself as your personal quality control supervisor. The peacock has positioned himself as your honor guard and is making soft announcement calls that seem to indicate he's ready to begin the processional to your first official activity of the day. The eunuchs have formed a loose formation around you, each with their own specialized role in managing your outfit, your movement, and your general imperial well-being throughout the day. But before you can leave your bedroom, there's one final ritual that somehow manages to top everything that's come before in terms of elaborate discomfort. The imperial threshold blessing involves a ceremonial cleansing of the doorway you're about to cross, followed by a series of prayers and incantations designed to ensure that your transition from private imperial space to public imperial space occurs under optimal spiritual conditions. The threshold blessing begins with the burning of special incense that's made from ingredients that cost more than most people's houses, but smell like someone set fire to a medicine cabinet. The incense is burned in a small brazier that's carried by a eunuch who walks slowly around the perimeter of your bedroom, filling the air with smoke that makes your eyes water and your throat itch despite the imperial voice preparation treatments you've just undergone. The monkey seems to have mixed feelings about the incense smoke and expresses them by making small coughing sounds while trying to wave the smoke away from his face with his tiny hands. The peacock responds to the incense by making what sound like sneezing calls, as if he's commenting on the quality of the spiritual aromatherapy. While the incense burns, another eunuch recites a series of prayers in a language that sounds like someone gargling honey while trying to sing opera. The prayers are supposed to invoke divine protection for your imperial activities, but they mostly just add another layer of sound to the already complex audio environment created by your chiming accessories, the monkey's commentary, and the peacock's ongoing announcements. The actual threshold crossing involves stepping over a small barrier that's been placed in your doorway and is covered with silk cloth that's been blessed by monks and sprinkled with water from a sacred spring. This sounds simple, but it becomes complicated when you're wearing platform shoes with pointed toes, carrying 30 pounds of ceremonial clothing, and trying not to trip over the various ornaments that hang from your outfit. The crossing itself has to be performed with your right foot first, followed by your left foot, while maintaining perfect imperial posture and making a specific gesture with your hands that's supposed to acknowledge the spiritual significance of moving from one sacred space to another. The monkey finds this ritual crossing fascinating and insists on performing his own version, which involves jumping over the threshold barrier while making excited chattering sounds. Once you've successfully crossed the threshold, there's a moment of ceremonial silence while the eunuchs assess whether the crossing was performed correctly and whether any adjustments need to be made to your outfit or accessories as a result of the transition. This assessment takes about 5 minutes and involves multiple people examining different aspects of your imperial presentation while you stand in the corridor outside your bedroom, trying not to let your crown slip or your ornaments tangle together. The corridor itself is another architectural marvel that's designed to make you feel important, while simultaneously making you as uncomfortable as possible. The walls are covered with yellow silk tapestries that tell the story of your imperial ancestors. But they're also positioned at exactly the right height to catch on your shoulder ornaments when you walk too close to them. The floor is made of polished marble that looks magnificent, but is also slippery enough that walking on it in platform shoes with pointed toes requires constant attention to avoid slipping and falling while wearing 30 pounds of irreplaceable ceremonial clothing. The ceiling of the corridor is painted with elaborate scenes of celestial dragons and phoenixes, which would be beautiful if you could actually look up to see them without disturbing your crown or getting your neck ornaments tangled in your collar. The paint itself is mixed with gold dust and precious pigments, but it's also applied over a base that apparently expands and contracts with temperature changes, which means small flakes of priceless artwork occasionally drift down and land on your shoulders or stick to your face makeup. The corridor is also designed to amplify sound, which means every step you take echoes dramatically, and every chime from your accessories reverberates off the walls and ceiling in ways that make your personal soundtrack even more complex. The monkey's chattering sounds are amplified as well, turning his small commentary into what sounds like a full conversation, and the peacock's calls echo with enough resonance to make them sound like imperial announcements. But the real challenge of corridor navigation isn't the slippery floors, or the sound amplification, or even the wall hangings that catch on your accessories. It's the fact that the corridor is populated with other palace residents who all have their own roles to play in your imperial day, and each of them requires specific interactions that involve precise protocols while you're wearing an outfit that makes normal human interaction nearly impossible. The first group you encounter is the Imperial Morning Greeting Committee, which consists of several high-ranking eunuchs whose job is to formally acknowledge your transition from private emperor to public emperor. This acknowledgement involves a series of bows, spoken greetings, and ritualized exchanges that have to be performed in exactly the right order while you're standing in a corridor wearing ceremonial clothing that restricts your movement and makes every gesture a carefully calculated engineering project. The greeting ritual begins with the committee members arranging themselves in a specific formation based on their rank and the importance of their roles in the palace hierarchy. This arrangement process takes about 10 minutes and involves a lot of shuffling and repositioning while you stand there waiting, trying not to let your accessories shift or your posture supports slip out of alignment. Once the committee is properly positioned, they perform a synchronized bow that's supposed to demonstrate their respect for your imperial authority. The bow itself is precisely choreographed, with different committee members bowing to different depths based on their rank, and the entire sequence is performed in complete silence, except for the rustling of silk robes and the soft chiming of your accessories as you shift slightly to acknowledge their display. Your response to the committee's bow involves your own carefully calibrated bow, which has to be deep enough to show proper humility before the heavens, but not so deep that you disturb your crown or cause your various ornaments to tangle together. This response bow is complicated by the fact that your hip alignment device restricts your ability to bend at the waist, which means you have to achieve the proper bowing angle through a combination of neck, positioning, and slight knee bending that takes considerable concentration to perform correctly. The monkey watches this entire bowing exchange with great interest and decides to participate by performing his own version of the greeting ritual, which involves hanging upside down from your shoulder ornaments and making small chattering sounds that might be his interpretation of formal greetings. The committee members pretend not to notice the monkey's contribution to the ceremony, but you can see several of them trying not to smile as he swings gently back and forth while making what sound like diplomatic squeaking sounds. The peacock seems to understand that formal greetings are taking place and provides his own ceremonial contribution through a series of soft, dignified calls that sound like he's announcing the importance of the occasion. His timing is actually quite good, and his calls seem to punctuate the various phases of the greeting ritual in ways that add solemnity to the proceedings. After the formal bowing is complete, the committee moves on to the verbal greeting phase, which involves each member reciting a specific phrase in classical Chinese while you respond with equally specific phrases that acknowledge their greetings and express your imperial satisfaction with their service. These verbal exchanges have to be performed in exactly the right tone and rhythm, and your responses have to be timed precisely to create the proper ceremonial cadence. The verbal greeting process is made more challenging by the fact that your throat is still coated with the imperial voice preparation treatments, which make everything taste like metal and tree sap, while supposedly giving your voice the proper resonance for imperial pronouncements. The treatments do seem to make your voice sound slightly deeper and more authoritative, but they also make you want to clear your throat constantly, which would be undignified during formal ceremonies. The monkey seems to enjoy the verbal greeting exchange and provides his own commentary through a series of soft, chittering sounds that almost sound like he's trying to participate in the conversation. His contributions are surprisingly well timed, and there are moments when his small vocalizations seem to complement the formal phrases being exchanged between you and the committee members. Once the verbal greetings are complete, the committee performs what's called the Imperial Transition Acknowledgement, which involves them stepping aside in a specific pattern. That creates a clear pathway for you to continue down the corridor, while demonstrating their understanding that you are moving from one phase of your imperial day to the next. This stepping aside process is choreographed as precisely as the greeting bows and involves each committee member moving to a designated position at exactly the right moment. The Imperial Transition Acknowledgement also includes a final series of bows performed as you pass each committee member, creating a wave-like effect as you move down the corridor. These passing bows have to be acknowledged with small nods of your head, which requires you to maintain perfect timing while walking in platform shoes with pointed toes on slippery marble floors, while wearing 30 pounds of chiming accessories. The monkey finds the passing bow sequence entertaining and begins making small bowing motions of his own as you pass each committee member, creating his own wave pattern that mirrors the official ceremony. His participation adds an element of unexpected charm to the proceedings, and you notice several committee members having difficulty maintaining their serious expressions as they watch his tiny bowing performance. By the time you've completed the Imperial Morning Greeting Committee ceremony, you've been standing and walking in the corridor for about 20 minutes, during which time your platform shoes have started to feel like they're compressing your toes. Your crown has shifted slightly and is creating a pressure point on the left side of your head, and your various ornaments have begun settling into positions that weren't part of their original arrangement. The peacock has maintained his position as your honor guard throughout the greeting ceremony, occasionally making soft announcements that seem to provide commentary on the proceedings. His presence adds a sense of continuity to the various rituals, as if he's serving as a living connection between the different phases of your Imperial morning routine. But the Imperial Morning Greeting Committee is just the first of several groups you'll encounter during your journey to the throne room, and each subsequent interaction will involve its own specific protocols, while your outfit becomes progressively more uncomfortable and your accessories continue to shift and settle in ways that weren't accounted for in the original fitting process. The next group you encounter is the Imperial Document Delivery Service, which consists of several eunuchs carrying various scrolls, tablets, and written materials that require your imperial attention at some point during the day. This group doesn't require the same elaborate greeting rituals as the morning committee, but they do need to present their materials for your acknowledgement and receive your imperial guidance about the order in which the documents should be addressed. The document presentation ceremony involves each courier stepping forward individually to display their materials while reciting a brief description of the contents and their level of urgency. Your role in this ceremony is to examine each document briefly and provide guidance about its priority level, which sounds simple until you realize that your wrist cuffs and finger chains make it difficult to handle papers normally, and your crown restricts your ability to look down at documents without disturbing your neck ornaments. The examination process requires you to hold each document at exactly the right angle to read it without bending your neck too far or allowing your sleeve ornaments to touch the paper and potentially damage important imperial communications. This positioning challenge becomes more complex with each document, as your arms begin to tire from holding them at unnatural angles while maintaining perfect imperial posture. The monkey shows great interest in the document examination process and attempts to assist by grabbing papers and examining them himself, occasionally making small commentary sounds that might be his evaluation of their importance. His assistance is not particularly helpful, as he has a tendency to leave small handprints on important documents and sometimes tries to eat corners of papers that he finds particularly interesting. The peacock seems to understand that important imperial business is being conducted and maintains a respectful silence during the document presentation ceremony, occasionally making soft warbling sounds that might be his version of thoughtful consideration. His presence adds a sense of dignity to the proceedings, even when the monkey is trying to determine whether a trade agreement with the northern provinces is edible. After examining all the documents and providing priority guidance to the couriers, you're presented with the Imperial Daily Schedule, which is a detailed timeline of your activities written on silken calligraphy, so elaborate it takes several minutes to decipher each entry. The schedule reveals that your day will include audiences with various officials, participation in several ceremonial rituals, a formal meal that will take approximately 3 hours to complete, and a series of administrative decisions that will require you to maintain perfect imperial bearing while processing complex information. Reading the schedule while wearing your complete imperial outfit requires you to hold the silk document at arm's length, since your crown prevents you from tilting your head down far enough to read anything held closer to your body. This arm position is uncomfortable and becomes more so as you work your way through the day's activities, each of which involves specific protocols and requirements that add to the overall complexity of your imperial responsibilities. The monkey seems to sense that the schedule contains important information and positions himself where he can see the document, occasionally pointing at various entries with his tiny finger and making small questioning sounds. His interest in the schedule is actually somewhat helpful, as his pointing sometimes draws your attention to details you might have missed while trying to read elaborate calligraphy at arm's length while wearing restrictive accessories. Once you've reviewed the daily schedule and provided acknowledgement to the document delivery service, you're ready to continue your journey to the throne room, but the corridor ahead contains several more groups of palace residents who require specific interactions as part of the imperial morning routine. Each of these interactions will involve its own protocols and challenges, while your outfit continues to settle and shift in ways that create new pressure points and discomforts. The third group you encounter is the Imperial Weather and Conditions Assessment Team, whose job is to provide you with detailed information about the environmental factors that might affect your imperial activities throughout the day. This information includes not just basic weather conditions like temperature and precipitation, but also more esoteric factors like wind direction, atmospheric pressure, and the quality of light that will be available for various ceremonial activities. The weather assessment presentation involves a senior meteorologist eunuch providing a detailed briefing, while junior team members hold various instruments and charts that illustrate current and predicted conditions. The briefing is thorough and includes information about how weather conditions might affect your comfort while wearing imperial regalia, which outdoor activities might need to be modified or moved indoors, and what adjustments might be needed to your schedule based on atmospheric factors. The weather briefing reveals that today will be warm and humid, which means your multiple layers of silk clothing will become increasingly uncomfortable as the day progresses, and your various metal ornaments will conduct heat in ways that might create additional discomfort. The team recommends several schedule modifications and suggests that certain outdoor ceremonies be moved to covered areas to prevent your imperial regalia from being damaged by moisture or excessive heat. The monkey listens to the weather briefing with apparent interest, occasionally making small commentary sounds when specific conditions are mentioned. He seems particularly concerned about the humidity forecast and makes worried, chittering sounds while examining his own fur, as if he's calculating how the atmospheric on fur, as if he's considering how the weather conditions might affect his personal comfort throughout the day. The peacock responds to the weather information by ruffling his feathers slightly and making what sound like preparatory calls, as if he's adjusting his own plans based on the atmospheric forecast. Your response to the weather briefing involves acknowledging the team's recommendations and providing imperial guidance about which schedule modifications should be implemented. This decision-making process is complicated by the fact that changing your schedule affects dozens of other people's activities, and each modification requires careful consideration of protocol, tradition, and the complex web of palace logistics that keep the imperial machine functioning. The decision-making process is also made more challenging by the increasing discomfort of your outfit, which is already beginning to show the effects of prolonged wear. Your crown has settled into a position that creates a constant pressure point just above your left ear. Your shoulder ornaments are pulling at the fabric of your outer robe in ways that create small tugging sensations with every movement, and your platform shoes are starting to compress your feet in ways that make walking increasingly uncomfortable. The monkey seems to sense your growing discomfort and begins making small sympathetic sounds while gently patting your shoulder ornaments, as if he's trying to provide comfort or perhaps adjust your accessories to more comfortable positions. His assistance is well-intentioned, but not particularly effective, since his small hands can't actually address the underlying structural problems with your elaborate outfit. After completing the weather assessment consultation, you continue down the corridor toward the throne room, but the journey is interrupted by the fourth group of palace residents, who require interaction as part of your imperial morning routine. This group is the Imperial Kitchen Coordination Committee, whose responsibility is to brief you on the day's meal plans and obtain your approval for any last-minute changes to the elaborate culinary schedule that governs imperial dining. The kitchen coordination briefing takes place in a small alcove off the main corridor, where the committee has arranged a display of sample ingredients and prepared dishes that represent the planned meals for the day. The display includes tiny portions of each planned course, arranged on miniature imperial dishes and presented with the same level of ceremony that will accompany the actual meals. The food sampling process involves tasting small portions of each planned dish, while the committee members explain the ingredients, preparation methods, and cultural significance of each course. This sampling is complicated by the fact that your mouth is still coated with the imperial voice preparation treatments, which alter the taste of everything and make it difficult to assess the actual flavors of the foods being presented. The monkey shows intense interest in the food sampling process and attempts to participate by grabbing small pieces of food from the sample dishes. His taste testing technique involves examining each piece carefully before either eating it enthusiastically or making disgusted faces and spitting it out, depending on his personal assessment of its palatability. His critiques are surprisingly helpful, as his reactions often align with your own preferences once you adjust for the hiru, taste-altering effects of your throat treatments. The peacock maintains his position as honor guard during the food sampling, but he also provides commentary through a series of soft calls that seem to indicate his approval or disapproval of various dishes. His reactions are particularly pronounced when dishes containing ingredients that might appeal to birds are presented, and he makes excited warbling sounds when fruit-based courses are discussed. the kitchen committee presents several proposed modifications to the meal schedule, including substitutions for ingredients that might not pair well with the humid weather conditions and adjustments to cooking methods that will ensure optimal food temperatures despite the extended ceremonial service protocols. Your approval of these modifications requires careful consideration of how changes might affect the timing of other activities and the complex logistics of imperial dining. The food approval process also includes a review of the ceremonial aspects of each meal, including the order in which dishes will be presented, the specific rituals that will accompany each course, and the coordination required between kitchen staff, serving eunuchs, and the various animals who play roles in imperial dining protocols. This coordination review reveals that today's meals will involve even more complex ceremonies than usual, due to the presence of visiting dignitaries who require specific cultural accommodations. By the time you've completed the kitchen coordination consultation, your journey to the throne room has taken nearly an hour, and you're beginning to understand why being emperor requires an entire day just to accomplish what most people would consider basic morning activities. Your outfit has continued to settle and shift, creating new areas of discomfort and requiring periodic adjustments by the attending eunuchs. The corridor ahead contains one final group that must be consulted before you can reach the throne room and begin your official imperial activities. This is the Imperial Security and Safety Assessment Team, whose responsibility is to brief you on any potential risks or concerns that might affect your safety and well-being throughout the day. The security briefing takes place in another alcove, where the assessment team has prepared detailed reports on various factors that could impact imperial safety, including the health status of all personnel who will be in close contact with you, the structural integrity of buildings and furniture that will support your elaborate outfit, and the behavioral assessment of all animals that will participate in imperial activities. The health status report reveals that several palace residents are experiencing minor illnesses that could potentially be transmitted to the imperial person, requiring modifications to interaction protocols and additional precautions during formal ceremonies. The structural assessment indicates that some of the furniture in the throne room may need reinforcement to support the weight of your imperial regalia, and the animal behavior report notes that several of the ceremonial birds are showing signs of seasonal molting that might affect their performance during formal events. The monkey listens to the security briefing with apparent concern, making worried chittering sounds when potential risks are discussed and occasionally patting your arm in what might be reassuring gestures or attempts to check your well-being. His interest in the safety assessment seems to indicate that he takes his role as personal imperial supervisor seriously and wants to ensure that all risks to your well-being are properly addressed. The peacock's response to the security briefing is more complex, involving a series of calls that seem to provide his own assessment of various risks and concerns. His vocalizations are particularly pronounced when the animal behavioral report is presented, and he makes what sound like disagreement calls when the molting concerns of other ceremonial birds are discussed, as if he's asserting his own superior reliability as imperial livestock. Your response to the security briefing involves approving various protective measures and protocol modifications that will minimize risks, while maintaining the dignity and tradition of imperial ceremonies. These decisions require balancing safety concerns against the requirements of imperial protocol, and each modification affects the complex choreography that governs palace activities. The security consultation also includes a review of emergency procedures that would be implemented if any safety concerns materialized during the day's activities. These procedures involve detailed plans for evacuating you from various locations while wearing imperial regalia, protocols for medical assistance that account for the restrictions imposed by your elaborate outfit, and backup plans for continuing imperial activities if primary locations or personnel become unavailable. By the time you've completed all the required consultations and interactions, your journey from your bedroom to the throne room has taken nearly 2 hours and has involved more people, protocols, and considerations than most people encounter in an entire week. Your imperial outfit, which felt merely uncomfortable at the beginning of the morning, has now settled into a state of persistent discomfort that affects every aspect of your movement and posture. The monkey has remained attached to your shoulder throughout the entire journey, occasionally making adjustments to your accessories and providing ongoing commentary that has become part of the ambient sound environments surrounding your imperial presence. His assistance has been intermittently helpful and consistently entertaining, and his presence has added an element of unpredictability to the various formal ceremonies. The peacock has maintained his role as honor guard and announcer throughout the journey, providing vocal accompaniment to the various activities and interactions. His calls have become more elaborate as the morning has progressed, and he now seems to have developed a comprehensive repertoire of sounds that correspond to different types of imperial business. As you finally approach the throne room entrance, you can see that the next phase of your imperial day will involve even more elaborate ceremonies and protocols, conducted while wearing an outfit that has already proven its ability to make simple activities extraordinarily complex and uncomfortable. The throne room doors are guarded by additional palace personnel who will require their own specific interactions before you can enter and begin your formal imperial duties. The throne room entrance ceremony involves a final series of preparations and adjustments that ensure you're properly presented for the formal imperial activities that will consume the majority of your day. These preparations include last-minute adjustments to your outfit and accessories, final applications of cosmetic treatments that will help you maintain imperial appearance throughout long ceremonial sessions, and coordination with the throne room staff who will manage the complex logistics of imperial court activities. The entrance preparations take place in a small antechamber adjacent to the throne room, where specialized eunuchs make final adjustments to your regalia, while others prepare the throne room environment for your arrival. This preparation process includes adjusting lighting to optimize the appearance of your imperial outfit, positioning ceremonial objects and furniture to accommodate your restricted mobility, and coordinating with the various animals and personnel who will participate in throne room activities. The final outfit adjustments reveal that your morning journey has caused several minor but significant changes to your imperial regalia. Your crown has shifted slightly and requires repositioning. Your shoulder ornaments have become entangled with your collar ornaments, while your hip drape gets twisted around your legs and your various bells. Chimes and bangles create a percussion symphony that announces your discomfort to everyone within a 3-room radius. The monkey has decided that your crown repositioning process is fascinating and climbs up to investigate, his tiny hands leaving damp prints on your freshly adjusted gold ornaments while he makes small commentary sounds about the eunuch's adjustment technique. His assistance involves tugging on various dangling elements to test their security, which undoes about half the adjustments the eunuchs just completed and creates new problems with ornament positioning. The peacock responds to all this crown adjustment activity by making what sound like supervisory calls, as if he's providing quality control feedback on the repositioning process. His commentary includes a range of vocalizations, from soft approval warbles when adjustments look correct to sharp disagreement screeches when he spots positioning errors that the eunuchs have missed. The shoulder ornament readjustment reveals that your morning journey has caused the decorative elements to settle into positions that create pressure, points against your collarbone and upper ribs. The readjustment process involves loosening the attachment points, repositioning the ornamental cascades, and retightening everything to specifications that will hopefully prevent further settling during the long day ahead. This shoulder work requires you to hold your arms in uncomfortable positions while eunuchs work around your torso, reaching under your various layers of clothing to access attachment points, while being careful not to disturb other elements of your outfit. The process is made more complex by the fact that your wrist cuffs and finger chains restrict your arm movement, so you can't hold your arms exactly where the eunuchs need them, requiring creative positioning and multiple people working simultaneously. The monkey finds the shoulder adjustment process educational and attempts to help by grabbing ornamental elements and pulling them into positions he considers optimal. His assistance creates additional work for the eunuchs, who have to redo several adjustments after his quality control interventions, but they maintain professional composure while working around a small primate who has appointed himself as assistant imperial decorator. Meanwhile, your platform shoes have been compressing your feet for over 2 hours now, and the pointed toes have created pressure points that are beginning to affect your balance and walking stability. The shoe situation can't be addressed without completely disrobing and starting the entire dressing process over, so you're committed to enduring increasing foot discomfort for the remainder of your imperial day. The pointed toe situation is particularly problematic because your toes are now compressed into unnatural positions, and the platform height means all your weight is distributed across a smaller surface area than normal human feet are designed to handle. The shoes also have a tendency to stick to the marble floors when you stand still for too long, creating small suction effects that make lifting your feet more difficult and add to the overall challenge of imperial mobility. The final preparation phase involves what they call Imperial Throne Room Orientation, which is a brief review of the specific protocols and procedures you'll need to follow once you enter the throne room and begin formal imperial activities. This orientation takes place while eunuchs continue making minor adjustments to your outfit, creating a multitasking situation where you're trying to process important information while people poke and prod various parts of your increasingly uncomfortable regalia. The throne room orientation reveals that today's formal sessions will involve longer periods of sitting than usual, due to the presence of visiting dignitaries who require extended ceremonial interactions. This means you'll need to maintain perfect imperial posture while wearing your restrictive outfit for several hours without breaks, which is concerning given that your various support devices are already creating pressure points after just the morning preparation activities. So there you have it, your day as the son of heaven, where every single moment involves someone poking you, something chiming, and a monkey with absolutely no sense of personal boundaries making editorial comments about your life choices. You've spent more time getting dressed than most people spend awake, eaten food that's been pre-chewed by a small primate, and discovered that being the most powerful person in China mostly means being the most uncomfortable person in China while wearing 30 pounds of accessories that sound like a percussion section, having a nervous breakdown. The monkey is still attached to your shoulder, probably planning tomorrow's grooming agenda, while the peacock continues his running commentary on imperial life. Your feet are compressed into pointed shoes that feel like medieval torture devices. Your scalp aches from a 15-pound crown, and you smell like a flower shop that's been fertilized with something organic and left to ferment in the sun. Congratulations, you're living the imperial dream, where luxury means suffering with style, and every breath you take sounds like a wind chime factory in a thunderstorm. Sleep well, and maybe dream of a world where being important doesn't require this much discomfort.